very interesting journey. We're going to take you through zero to production, and we're also going to be talking about CI/CD pitfalls. So we're basically going to be talking about how we grow production and how can we prevent it. I am Kirti, and
I am Ajay.
And this is going to be a good session. We're just going to talk about some horror stories. Can you have a message, please?
Yeah, so covering to today's agenda, we would be talking about things that we do at Baker, majorly managing CI/CD. So we'll cover how CI/CD looks at Baker from zero to production. The next thing would be the whole agenda of PPTs. That is all the tech horror stories that we have. We all have seen or faced or encountered a lot of horror stories in our careers, so nothing new in that. And we'll end with questions. So,
fine. So before we talk about our horror stories and adventures, you will need to understand the architecture that we have set up at Baker so that the stories make sense. So let's first go through the architecture that we have set up. What is our infrastructure and what all we manage. Right. So we take you through the entire CI/CD pipeline process. We manage all things CI/CD at Wayfair. Starting from the very first thing that you do when you write a code. So the first thing is that you hit a git commit. Right. So all our code sits at GitHub. That's where it lives and breathes. As soon as the developer raises a pull request and commits the code, a build kite pipeline gets triggered automatically. So build kite is our CI/CD platform that we use at Wayfair. Okay. Now, in your GitHub code, in your GitHub demo, you will have a pipeline.yaml, which is basically a pipeline config, which will contain the blueprint of how you want your code to be deployed or built, or how you want it to act. So Pitfalls is going to pick up that pipeline config and it's going to construct the pipeline accordingly, right? So starting from GitHub, you raise a pull request, a pipeline gets triggered, and your jobs are now up in the pipeline. Your jobs can be the basics, netting, unit tests where you hope your code is working fine and you test it out, integration tests where you find out it's not working fine, and then maybe a build and a deploy. Right. Now all these jobs that I'm talking about are picked up by agents. We have agents that we maintain. These are VMs. We have tried to configure our VMs dedicated to jobs, just trying to isolate. So we have Docker agents, we have Java-based agents for specific jobs. But just that's it for you to know. But you should just be aware that we manage VMs, and VMs pick up the jobs. And these VMs, they scale dynamically as per the job requirements and how many scheduled jobs we have. Right? So GitHub commit, build-kite pipeline gets triggered, and then when your pipeline steps finally reach out to the final part of your CI, which is the final frontier, which is the build process, a Docker image gets built, the standard procedure, Docker image gets built, it gets pushed into Artifactory, and that's where your code, Artifact, which is the internal Artifactory, and then we move on to CD.
Yeah, so once the CI job is done, we prompt developers, are you sure you want to deploy it in dev or not, whichever environment you are testing. Once they allow us, or once they give on a small yes, it starts with the next process, that is CD. And since everything is Kubernetes nowadays, we are a standalone team which manages all the teams that are there, all the developer teams which are around 300. We are responsible for all their CI/CDs. So they have a lot of Kubernetes YAMLs which needs to be applied across teams, and we cannot just manage a lot of YAMLs. So help comes to rescue us. That was an obvious answer, I believe. But how would we allow them to use? So we want to give control to the developers. Whatever they want to deploy, however they want to deploy, whatever HP they want to set, how many replicas they want to set, we let them do for their application. We don't intervene in that. So they have their values YAML in the repo itself, which are CD plugins read, which map to the L charts, respective L charts that they are referring to. And once manifests are applied to the Kubernetes cluster, we hop on to the next step, where if they want to do canary, we provide them Argo rollout strategy steps, which again they can configure in their KTS.yaml. Once that is done, they just monitor it in Datadog or whichever dashboard they want to check upon. Up to their application, their alerts, their deployment YAMLs, their configuration, their pipeline. We just give them all the power for their application, but we manage GitHub. GitHub comes under us if there is any issue, any service account related query they have, that falls under us. If they want to create a data column, that falls under us. Pipelines. So if your pipelines are slow or if anything is wrong, even if your pipelines are failing, they will come to us. Even if it's their issue, we'll just have to entertain them. And then if there are any Docker related issues, that also falls under us. Though we don't manage the artifactories, but since it is all happening on the CI, everything boils down to us. Following, we don't manage Kubernetes cluster, but we are responsible for how your canary is progressing. If your canary is halted, or if developer wants to roll back with a single click, or if they want to do some analysis on top of it, that is our area to cover. So yeah, this is the whole CI which we manage as a team. I just shared my job description and paper, but continue.
Okay, so now that you know how our infrastructure works, what are the components that can and may and will go wrong? Going on to the main part of our talk, which is actually going to be pretty chill, so just to set the expectations, which is going to be sharing stories, which a lot of you must have already encountered, and we'll try to take some lessons from it. This is like a mass post-mortem of all the incidents that we've encountered, right? So, this horror story is involving some fire. Right, so we start off with the very first one. Let's go move on to the first. Yeah, thank you so much. So let's talk about a very chill incident. We start with something that was actually a very stupid mistake. It was a very stupid change. We were not aware of it. But all the pipelines were down, and this was a P1 incident at Wayfair. So the other day, somewhere, actually it was Thursday, somewhere around 4 o'clock, our Slack starts buzzing madly. Because all the developers are like, you know what, all the pipelines are failing, none of them are working, and so our team hops on call. And we find out that absolutely all of the pipelines at Wayfair were failing, and they were failing at git clone step, right? Since all the pipelines were failing, we marked it as a P1 incident since everything was blocked, all the developers were blocked. A P1 incident is to be solved ASAP Rocky, so as soon as it comes up, it's supposed to solve it. Right? Immediately our team split up into two groups. Half of us were trying to find out a very quick fix, a very quick solution, which I'll talk about, and the rest of the team was trying to go through the logs, trying to understand what all has broken, where is the impact, etc. Now, coming back to the problem. We went through the pipeline logs, we saw that our git clone was failing. Okay, great. It's failing on build kite level, pipeline level. Is it working on a local? Is it something that we're seeing? Is it a problem with GitHub? We do a local build clone, that's working fine. We SSH into the VM, and we clone, and we do a clone in the VM. But it's working fine for us, for me, as my user. Let's switch to a user that we have dedicated for this process, which is the buildkite user. We try to clone as the buildkite user, and that's where the clone is failing. The error is the account has been suspended, contact your enterprise manager. Great, we have identified the issue. Clones are failing. Why? Because the account which is responsible for cloning is failing and has been suspended. Again, now the other half of us were trying to find a quick fix. The quick fix there immediately was to create a new service account, give it all the permissions or the access that the original account had, and roll it up on all the VMs. But guess what? It's gonna take a lot of time to do that. So then we scratched that plan and we joined the other half of the team, just trying to figure out what the impact is. Okay. Now, luckily for us, we had a manager in the call with us, because this was not a change that we had rolled out. We did not make any recent changes that would probably cause the service accounts to go down. So our manager told us that, okay, hey, I think the security team maybe ran an automation in the morning that was to clean up sales service account, and maybe, just maybe, our service accounts also got caught up in it. So we had like 8 crucial service accounts for different tools that we use. In the meantime, half of us were also trying to identify the impact. We found out that it's not just from Bitcoin and not just book learning, but the Jenkins service account was also suspended, or everything was suspended. Basically, we were all down. Again, he pays the security team, told them, hey, your automation suspended our accounts, this, that, and they reported it back. And everything was back in action. But, so obviously, it's a pretty simple problem. The accounts are suspended, you're reported back, and everything's going to work fine, right? But what did we learn from this, and why are we discussing about this? Because this was like a very, very super change. This was something that our team was actually not aware of. We being the infra managers, we should be aware of it. But the super change caused the entire Wayfair pipelines to go down, engineering hours wasted, this and that. So yeah, the takeaway from this one would be to take care of the smallest changes that you do. A small suspension of a single service account could completely block out the entire development teams. Moving on to the next one.
Alright, so GitHub issues, the very starting point, if that fails, all the pipelines, everything after it does not make sense. Right? Covering one more incident in that very entry point is this one we did not have 100% downtime, but there was an intermittent issue which was reported. The agents are timing out when they are git cloning, and we were like, okay, it does not have any specific pattern as such, but forms are again filling up with some users reporting it, and we were like, okay, let's check it out. Then I'll slightly deviate from it. So whenever we do a SSH from our local to any VM, it prompts us if you want to save the IP to your local host, to your known host, right? So that's where we press Y and it just saves the IP, the host as a known host, and we are good to go, right? So apparently our built-in agent VMs were also configured with the SSH configuration, which was set to ask if there are new IPs that are discovered, and you know what, GitHub had added new IPs for their resolution, and those IPs were not added to our known hosts for the built-in agents that are responsible for running the pipelines. So whichever VMs that are coming up and were hitting the new IPs, or basically the new IPs, the GitHub, okay. Yeah, so whichever agents which are to hit GitHub with the new IPs were facing this issue because there was no one sitting there to press Y at that point of time, and things were timing out, and we had to solve it, like we had to make a remedial patch. We retooled all the agents to disable the key from ask to not ask, like just add it and run it for the time being. And then we identified what were all the IP ranges that GitHub had, and we added them to known host list, and everything went green after that, no issues related to this. So what we learned, again, we are not even making any changes, but even your third-party vendors will cause a lot of panic for you, and your developers would be unhappy from the team which is managing all of this. We did not do anything wrong, but yet we are to be blamed for it. So yeah, moving on.
Moving on to something a little more different and slightly interesting. So, mountain of many problems. Most of us look at incidents as just the major problem. So, only and only when everything is going down, nothing is working, that's your incident. But if you actually really zoom in your day-to-day, whatever you're doing at your job, and zoom in into all the problems that the developers are facing, maybe the pipelines are not working, they're being blocked at a deploy step. It could be anything. These are all mini incidents as well. It's just that the impact is not that big. So, is there a way? Now, this is going to be a general discussion because you know what? Let's link up later and discuss about this after we're done with that talk. But yeah, is there a way that you can solve problems on their own, can you probably build a self-healing pipeline, something that if it fails, it heals itself? You all definitely, I think, know where this is going, and I think somebody said that a talk is never complete without introducing GenAI into it. But so this is what we thought about. You all probably have a Slack channel, all SREs here probably have a Slack channel where all the developers hit you up, fire you up with queries that this is not working, this is breaking, this is not working, this is breaking. And majority of those queries are probably redundant. You've answered them multiple times, you attach the same documents, but still the same questions, and it's normal, it's natural, it's going to happen. What if we build something that can solve those redundant problems so that we can focus on other things and probably not focus on redundantly solving those questions? Introducing GenAI. Now, we want our AI assistant to solve the developer's problems but with context. Now, what's the key difference between you and SRE who's working at the company versus ChatGPT, for example? You have context. ChatGPT needs context. So your AI assistant has to be an assistant which has context around everything that's going on in your company, right? Introducing RAG again. So to talk about RAG in very layman terms, you can picture maybe a library, and RAG is a librarian. You're going to walk in with a book request, and RAG will pick out the best, most relevant book for your request and give it to you instead of just having and giving you a generic book from the genre. So basically, RAG will eat up all the context that you feed it. You're gonna feed indexed Slack messages, Slack solutions, any documentations that you have in your company. You're gonna feed it to a vector database, to RAG, and then RAG will generate the answers with the context that you have fed it into it. So now what you've done is essentially you've made an AI assistant which can act as a proxy on your behalf to solve all those redundant queries. Now again, exactly, the GenAI, and then you check the forum, you check the Slack, it's all going to go back to back, but a good solution would be to use an AI-based solution using that. And we're sure most of you are also trying to implement this at your company because all of us are trying to get our hands dirty with GenAI. But this is still a work in progress for us, but we thought it was worth mentioning since we can get ideas from you, you can get ideas from us. So maybe let's talk about it after the talk, and then we move on to the next one.
Right, so we have covered GitHub related issues. Then let's talk about pipelines. BuildKite is running a lot of pipelines. So to build the context a little more, as Keith mentioned that we run Docker agents separately. I'll call them queues, Docker queue, Java queue, or your lending queues that have specific dependencies that are required for it to run specific steps. Okay. So one morning, developers came, they were developing their code, committed, and then they started their BuildKite UI. They saw it's progressing or it's working. Some of the agents are spinning up, some of them are waiting. We run our pipelines in a dynamic scaling function, scaling method, so that we don't waste a lot of compute resources. So few developers started typing on forums that something is wrong with the CI, and we are like waiting for 30 minutes for individual agents also. Though they were getting picked up, but the waiting time was increasing drastically, which was flagged as an anomaly. So what we did next was to check why is it happening. We saw that our CI is not scaling for some reason. Then how do we scale our CIs? So we run a cron job which checks how many jobs are asking for agents. If there are jobs that are in waiting state, we add them up to the existing number that is the agent count running at the moment. And guess what? This is a pipeline cron which runs running on the CI. But there was a bad decision of running it in the same queue which developers are also using. So guess what? the cron which is responsible for scaling is also waiting for an agent to spin up and update the scaling. So we quickly figured it out. We thankfully Bitcoin has a priority queue functionality, so we increased the priority for to the highest possible, and then picked it up. That was a remediate solution, and in the long term, then we realized that we should give it a dedicated queue, even if it's not going to get used so much, but it is a permanent solution to never have such deadlock in future. So yeah, that was the solution, and for a very silly mistake or a bad decision which haunted us at this point. Yeah, moving to next.
Again, I hope you're enjoying our stories. I'm listening to these as stories. It's only okay. Okay, great. Docker betrays us. And fine, let's talk about this one. This one again is going to be an interesting one. As engineers, we're very tempted at all times to pull images from outside and use them in repositories at our company. We do understand that it can and sometimes does hold malicious code, but that's okay, that's fine. Most of us do it, we pull public images from Docker. Majority companies have enterprise Docker accounts. Let me talk a little bit about Docker rate limiting, which is what I'm going to be covering here. So Docker definitely knows that all the free users heavily exploit their infrastructure, their repositories, their images, their artifact and everything. So Docker has implemented and enforced a rate limit for free users, authenticated users, and enterprise users. So if you're a free user, you get only 100 pulls, and to set in the context for the horror story. So if you're a free user, you only get to do 100 pulls every 6 hours for one IP. If you're an authenticated user, you get 200 pulls, 6 hours per IP. And if you're an enterprise user, you have unlimited pulls. Right. So this again, one fine day, we got hit up on Slack because there's no way to set up an alert around the problem that we faced with this. So our Slack started buzzing, the developers were like, you know what, intermittently pipelines are failing and they're throwing an error saying Docker pull denied, rate limiting hit. But that shouldn't happen for us. We have enterprise accounts. That should not be the case for us. What would go wrong? In our case, the issue was, which is something that actually a lot of you can face. Majority of you must be rotating your secrets, right? You have to rotate your secret credentials, etc. from time to time. For us, and also if you're an enterprise user, you have to configure these secrets inside your VM, you have to configure your service accounts with these secrets, etc. And these keep rotating. And in our case, what had happened is that the secrets had expired, which is why our VM was actually trying to pull the Docker image as a free user, and that's where it was hitting the rate limit of 100 pulls, right? So we just went in, fixed our secrets, and then everything was fine and amazing. But this was something new that we discovered. We did not know about this. So Docker has a rate limiting on free users, authenticated, and enterprise users. And actually today itself, we prepared the presentation yesterday, and we got to know about this today, that they are going to update this policy around the rate limit. They're going to enforce even stricter rate limiting now. So I think it's 40, yeah, it's 40 pulls, 1 hour for one IP for free users. 60?
10 for now.
Okay, 10 for free users, 40 for authenticated users, and unlimited for enterprise, right? So just good to have point in your mind that this is something that you might encounter, and if suddenly your pipelines are hitting a rate limit on Docker pull, it's probably because something's wrong with your keys, your enterprise account is not working as your enterprise account, so you're trying to pull the images as a public account and you're hitting the limit. Right. Great. Next one.
Alright, so we covered that we are using help charts, and to apply the manifest, we are also using help install because Helm has it, so why won't you use it? We found the infra at that state, and things are okay because as long as things are running, nobody wants to change and everyone is happy with it. Sometimes do user face timeout issues because Helm will have to check if you are using a wait flag, and then check if your pods are healthy or running, right? Sometimes when the scale is very large, if you are running 100 pods, and will have to wait for a very long duration, and we then enable them with a custom timeout value. So based on your application, based on your infra scale, you can configure the longer wait timeouts. But the problem with this is our agents were getting hogged for that monitoring observation, and let's say if there are 10 teams that are running this particular step, 10 agents are getting hogged at that point of time, which is total waste of resources. The other point which we realize is that Helm is a package manager first. Its sole job was to manage Kubernetes manifests, not to actually do the continuous deployment thingy. And then we went into the market and we realized there are a lot of solutions that do a continuous delivery of deployments like Argo City, Flux City. There are a few others. So we analyzed and we discovered that Argo City was a good fit for us. Apparently we were using Argo City, but not for end users or the software teams, but for internal SRE or platform teams who are using it. Because we understand things better and we are like, we need to teach them if you want them to onboard. But then we made a strict decision like, let's go with it. It does not matter. It's going to be improvement on top of the pipeline. And since there are engineers that need to do some job, we went with it as a critical component. We integrated Argo CD, which so now I'm going to talk about Argo CD, how it is different from Helm, and the things that it brings to the table, which Helm was lacking. So what we did was we introduced a new plugin and asked them or enforced it by creating PRs for all the users, start using it, and this should ease up onboarding the users. We also promoted a lot of documentation. We also showed them in the workshops that now you don't need to go to your CLI, run kubectl commands, switch clusters, and check what is happening with your pods. You can just check it in the Argo CD UI. You will get all the clusters in the same place. Just click on, and you can reach to the logging level as well, just in a single UI. So that was an ease for them and ease for us to free up our agents, save some compute, and make life a bit easier. So yeah, that was a CD done wrong example which we saw, and then we had to fix it because this is our job. Yeah.
Great. I think that was all from our side. We hope that you enjoyed our horror stories, and we also hope to listen to some horror stories from you all after we go home. Is there a refreshment? Yeah, actually, this is a fail slide from our side because there was a refreshment change of plans. Yeah. You guys are supposed to go for refreshments after our presentation, but you guys did it before our presentation.
I think we are up for questions, so you can ask anything or you can share any ideas here.
Yeah, so I think you already covered pretty well, but I just wanted to know if the IP ranges that you talk about from GitHub, like should you not use IP ranges for range specific data?
Yeah, so when you resolve GitHub.com, it will give you certain IPs which can handle GitHub.com requests. And GitHub had apparently added more IPs to that. So the new IPs were not added in our known host list. So these were encountered as like, do you want to save them or do you trust them? Kind of scenario happened.
Okay, so but you also mentioned something about ranges, right? IP ranges.
Yeah, so usually these IPs are not individual IPs, they give it as like subnets, subnet ranges, right? So
you still added all the IPs and then
no, just the GitHub IPs, the new ones that they have added, not all.
Yeah. And what was the solution to the git clone issue? Like, was it the service?
So the git clone issue was basically happening because the service account that we have inside, that we've configured inside each VM, which primarily has the permissions to perform this gift clone, that account got suspended itself. So if you personally SSH into the VM and try to do a gift clone with your user, it's going to work. But with the service account user that we had, which was a Bitcoin user, it wasn't working because the account itself was suspended. So the solution around it is you unsuspend the account. It got suspended by accident. So the security team changes, suspended this by accident, suspended our account by accident. So the only thing, the best thing you can do, the fastest thing you can do is to just unsuspend it, and that's going to unblock the deploys.
Thank you. Interesting stories. Thanks for sharing them. Wanted to know what was the decision behind using build kite? I just read about it. Why not just use GitHub Actions and just upload to artifact?
GitHub Actions too costly at this part of it. The scale at which we run, it is way too costly, and we would want to run the infra on our own, which they don't provide.
They should run GitHub and run your infra.
Okay. I was not aware of it, but mostly it's more around the cost implication. And yes, for CAs, you do check build guide, GitHub Actions. Probably would want to use Jenkins, but the latest solutions and even harness also provides CAs. So this was a company decision, and when we joined, it was already.
Basically, that's
Yeah. So if GitHub goes down, we don't have any alternative at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
You mentioned about the GenAI. So what is the model that you are using, and can you give some insights about it?
So
And how are you hosting it? Self-hosting or is it cloud-based?
So we are not hosting anything. We are just paying for everything.
No, is it ChatGPT?
No, we are using Gemini. So we are on GCP, and GCP is very tightly integrated. So they have Vertex component, which is more or less a Gemini in other words, but in the GCP fashion. And we are still building, we are still working on the RAG part. We just integrated with your backend application, which will provide that context to all the API calls that you to make the Vertex AI. So this is how we have planned it. We can discuss it later if you want.
So I have this question related to Argo CD. Is it currently in your organization, is it public or private? Your Argo CD, because when you allow it to be public, right, your devs also can access the Argo CD, right, and check whether the deployments have gone through. Mistaken, if they would, instead of checking logs, they delete it, take it as production scenario. So in that case, currently what's your setup? Is it public or private, your endpoint of Argo CD?
So how about if I bring my developers to private, make them, force them to use VPN all the time, and then provide them an internal endpoint of Argo CD, control their access by grouping them as users, and then club them according to what access we want them to have in the UI. Because definitely we don't want to give them delete access, especially in production. When we don't have that, you have to go through the proper channel, you have to properly commit if you want to delete something, so that we have a track that yes, you did it. So yeah, this is the way.
Okay, and also the second question in terms of service account. I mean, my organization has InfoSec team who defines and service account should have what kind of privileges. So when they run through and test or test against the users, so it doesn't. I mean, while you had a service account on your end, your service account was created with the InfoSec parameter. It was just created randomly and gave some minimal privileges so that the things would work, the cloning would work. So I just.
How about maximum access, because it's CI. The second thing is, this is one way to go, like your security team pre-audits, but there is another way that your security team audits after things are done. So we are on the later stages because there are a lot of things that were happening before, and now it is consolidated through the single team. So we are trying to refining it. A lot of maintenance work has to be done. Yeah.
Actually, almost regularly revamping everything. Yeah, when you get it, you'll be like, oh shit, okay.
That's better.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed.